everyone, my name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today we are continuing the conversation we started earlier discussing how to have a successful relationship between a new Dom and an experienced submissive. And today we are specifically going to be focusing on how you can have a successful scene between somebody who is a not experienced dominant and an experienced submissive. So let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so here we are, the scene. The centerpiece of BDSM, the building block of most kink relationships, probably the reason why you're here, and what is a lot of people's motivations for being involved in the lifestyle. The scene is really where the rubber hits the road. This is where you really know if this is something that you want to do and is something you're going to be able to do as part of a relationship. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but no matter how much you practice, no matter how much you read, nothing will ever truly prepare you for actually doing a real-life scene with another person. Yes, you can practice. Yes, you can read. Yes, you can learn from others. Yes, you can go to dungeons and watch it. All of those are great preparations. But chances are, come the day of the actual scene, your first time doing it, you're probably going to be a little bit nervous. And if you weren't nervous, that's when I would be worried, because then that means you probably haven't fully considered the potential implications of the activities that you're doing. But if you are nervous, again, just remember that it's totally normal and it's healthy to be worried about doing this for the first time. It's like any other first time of anything. You know, you're never really quite sure how it's going to go, and I think how you should think about this is less like, oh, I need to hide from my partner that I'm nervous or worried because then they're not going to take me seriously. Instead, think about this as an opportunity to open up to your partner, to share vulnerability, to get an opportunity for bonding and for showing that you trust your partner, and going to them and saying, hey, I'm super excited about this thing that we're going to be doing, but I'm also kind of nervous, and I'm just wondering how you're feeling. Is there anything that we haven't talked about yet, or anything that you want to go over? Open those doors up for communication, and hopefully that'll give your partner an opportunity to reassure you and give you a little bit more confidence going into everything. Again, you don't need to have everything totally figured out. I know there's this big pressure and this big worry that, like, you're not going to be Dom enough, and that you're not going to give off the right energy during the scene, and you're going to be too nervous, and you're going to mess up. And hey, you're going to mess up. We all mess up on every side of the slash, experienced or not. We all make mistakes. And what's important is not making mistakes, but knowing how to handle them, knowing how to mitigate their occurrence, and making sure that everybody in the scene is staying as safe as possible. And if you have been reading, if you have been practicing, if you are doing informed risk-aware kink, you're probably in a pretty good spot. And chances are the mistakes that you make are so minor that they're not really going to impact the overall effect of the scene. You're probably still going to have a good time. So just remember to be kind to yourself. Remember you don't need to be perfect, and remember that these scenes don't need to be perfect. And even after you've been doing this for 20, 30 years, chances are you're still not going to do it perfect every single time. So with all that in mind, what types of scenes do I actually recommend that new Doms start with experienced submissives? Well, again, I really just want to emphasize that when it comes to experienced submissives, you're probably not going to be able to knock their socks off the first time out of the gate. Because especially if they are used to being in really heavy bondage, or they're heavy pain sluts, and they're used to being beaten black and blue during every scene, you're probably not going to be able to keep up with that, and it's kind of unhealthy to have the expectation that you will. So hopefully you've had good conversations where both you and your partner have a very mutual understanding of exactly what's going to be happening during these scenes. You don't have to get out all of the crazy darkest fantasies all at once. These first couple of scenes are meant to build. They are meant to kind of be like a formal dress rehearsal to everything that's going to come after it, and really give you an opportunity to practice some skills in a controlled setting. And that's really what I recommend to people, regardless of if they're a new dominant or a new submissive, is to have very tightly timed, controlled scenes where you are doing things in a very limited capacity, and you're not going to be going too off the script, as it were, at any point. So I'd recommend doing things where you're keeping it to about 30 minutes or under. You're not being overly intricate and complicated with things like handcuffs or bondage or sensory deprivation. Unless that's going to be the only thing that you're doing during the scene, if you're adding stuff like impact play on top of that, I would keep that more on the simple side. If you are engaging in impact play, I would stick to one, possibly two different instruments. So that might be spanking, caning, flogging, etc., wherever it is that you want to start and where it interests you. And I would make sure you discuss kind of a general intensity level that you want to go for. So say on a scale of 1 to 10, you want to aim for a 1 to a 4 or a 4 to a 7. I have videos about how to do all of these things, by the way, if you're curious. And additionally, also really important is I would keep in mind communication techniques. I always recommend using safe words. You can use verbal and nonverbal safe words. And I would also really strongly encourage you to consider plain English communication. That means your partner tells you in the scene, "Ow, my ankle hurts," and you ask them, "Why does your ankle hurt?" I know sometimes in BDSM hearing things like no or stop and all of these things can be kind of confusing and counterintuitive because they don't always mean literally stop, but especially for your first couple scenes, when you're not really sure about the energy yet, I would take any stop, any no, anything like that on either side to mean actually stop and actually no. You can add in more of those consensual and non-consent elements as you get a little bit more experienced. Now, what a type of scene like this would look like might be something like we are going to do a 30-minute long spanking scene where we are going to be aiming for about a 4 to 7 intensity level. We are going to be doing it where I'm wearing leather gloves and you are going to be naked, and we're going to be doing it over the bed, primarily on your butt and upper thighs. And basically what I would like to do is when I spank you, I would like you to say the number of the spank followed by yes sir or yes ma'am, whatever you prefer. And then I would also like to have you say the intensity level of how hard that spank is so I can make sure that I am calibrating my hits to something that we are going for in the scene. That might sound something like, 1 sir, that was about a 5, okay? And that's how I would frame it. Are these the most exciting scenes in the world? Not particularly, but that's okay. Again, this is not a situation where you should really be expecting to completely knock the other person's socks off. That is not what we are going for. What we are going for here is a dress rehearsal. We are going into detailed practice sessions. And the reason why I advocate for thinking about things this way is you can read, you can go to classes, you can watch other people play, you can listen to your submissive talk about past scenes that they've done for hours and hours and hours. But until you get into an actual scenario where you are doing a scene with another person, there are so many skills you haven't really had the time to exercise yet. That might be things like figuring out what your comfort level is, figuring out how to manage your energy, figuring out how to manage your tempo and the intensity of your hits, figuring out how to communicate in scene, figuring out how to end a scene slowly rather than abruptly, figuring out what your aftercare needs are, figuring out how to read nonverbal body language, and so on and so forth. And I really think that before you can start engaging in those amazing, orgasm-inducing, subspace-tacular type things, you really need to be able to have practice, know a little bit more about these things before you can really expect to dive into those waters. And again, I really think that people put too much pressure on dominants to do everything perfectly the first time, and the point of doing these scenes is to not be clinical or boring, but it's meant to be practice, and just through doing more and more negotiation, you will be able to do scenes that incorporate more elements to them, or are more complicated, that play with darker emotions, and are more like what an actual BDSM scene feels like. Okay, well, what should a submissive do during these types of scenes? Communicate. I know, big surprise, right? Well, actually, it must be for some people, because a lot of folks have this idea that submissives are just meant there to sit and take it, and the dominant gets to completely control what happens at all times, and the dominant should never adjust their course for the sake of the submissive. And those comments are usually from people who don't have very much experience doing BDSM, at least in a consensual manner. So, I really think that submissives should be able to communicate. I would really advocate that you negotiate for scenes where you can use plain English communication. People oftentimes use the term topping from the bottom as a derogatory way of talking about submissives who give too much feedback during scenes. But if we're going to allow it sometime, it has to be during these types of scenes. I can see no good reason why we would want to prevent experienced submissives from giving accurate and detailed feedback because they are aware of their bodies and aware of their pain tolerance levels in order to help a dominant become a better dominant. I don't see why that is inherently a bad thing if it's been negotiated that that is okay for that particular relationship. And again, I really do advocate for that because I think it's invaluable feedback. We spend too much time making dominants read minds and guess, and I think if we can just cut through that bullshit and allow submissives to actually tell people how they feel during a scene, it will make it so much easier to have those scenes later where you don't need to give that kind of feedback. So you might as well just do it now when you're not really focusing on getting into deep subspace or collecting bruises or something else anyways. I would keep in mind using things like telling them how your body feels, telling them where your energy level is at, how intense things are, the placement of things, where your mind is going, all of these sorts of feedbacks, just whatever your body is currently processing, all of that can be really valuable information. So when you feel comfortable, please share that either during the scene if it's appropriate or save it for afterwards during the debrief process. Now, big note here for brats. I know a lot of you watch this channel. I have many friends who are brats. When it comes to bratting and new dominance, I have to say that if you are a brat, I recommend you put the brat away for a little bit when playing with a new dom. And the reason for that is bratting is a very complicated dynamic. Not everybody is ready to play with it, and in particular when you're dealing with people who may not yet be very confident in their skill set, who are still kind of learning things, rather than taking bratting in stride, it can seem as an insult or that you're trying to subvert the dynamic, or that you're trying to boss them around, or you're making fun of their prowess as a dom, and none of those are good things. And with time, I think you can learn to kind of add that in a playful manner or in a way that just positively contributes for a relationship. But unless you have explicitly negotiated otherwise and they understand what bratting is, I would not go into a first-time scene with a brand new dominant going full brat all over the place, because that can have really negative consequences, especially emotionally, for the dominant partner. And that brings me to my last point after the scene is done, which is the debrief. Debriefing is such a valuable part of the BDSM communication experience, particularly if you are in an ongoing play or some other type of relationship. And what this does, and you don't need to do it immediately after the scene, it can be a couple hours or days afterwards, even weeks if you want it to be, where you just talk about how the scene went. How did things feel? How were things emotionally, mentally, physically? Was it too long? Was it too short? Was there anything that you really enjoyed, that you didn't enjoy, that you want to change next time, that you look forward to doing again? Just anything that really happened in the scene, you can put it out on the table. And use that as an opportunity, again, to strengthen your bond, to be honest with your partners, to discover things about yourself, and especially when you are new, I really, really, really recommend that you do this, because oftentimes new doms, there is dom drop, they may not know what their aftercare needs are, and having these debriefs gives everybody an opportunity to give equal, honest, and kind and sensitive feedback about how everything went, what their needs are, what can change, or what they want to do more of. And again, for me, this is really almost more important than the scene itself, is having these moments of debrief. And for doms, please remember to not take feedback as a personal attack on your ability as a dominant. If it's given in a kind, considerate way, this is all for the sake of building a better relationship. And submissives, do remember to phrase things in a kind way. Don't just say, that flogging sucked. Give specific feedback about why it sucked. Use positivity sandwiches. Help your message be received in the way you intend to receive it, rather than doing things out of anger. And if the scene did go horribly, I hope it didn't, but it might. You can be honest about that, but attacking somebody's character and just telling them that it sucked and not giving any reasons why is not necessarily conducive to helping to build a relationship structure. Also, please remember to ask your dominant questions as well. I think there is a trend where we expect doms to ask all the questions and subs to answer all of them, but especially with new doms, take this as an opportunity to ask questions, see how they are feeling, see what their aftercare needs are, see if there's anything that they want to change or how they felt. And in particular, I find some dominants do struggle with finding their words for describing experiences. And if that is the case, there are many charts that you can use to help people identify their emotions and what emotions are related to each other. So if you need to, make sure to look into those as well. So my last little bit is talking about rules and protocol. I think this is actually very, very similar in many ways to having a scene, and that there needs to be robust communication, there needs to be good negotiation up front. You need to be willing to start small and build up over time, not expecting everything to be perfect the first go round, that you're going to be blowing anybody's socks off. And if you are looking for something that's maybe focused around a 24/7 or more power exchange focused dynamic, I would recommend you look at some of the videos down in the description box below. Alright, I think that is everything for today, guys. Hopefully you found this information helpful. There is just so much to consider when it comes to having a relationship with a new dom and an experienced sub. I think most of it is really not all that different from a lot of other BDSM relationships. It comes down to trust and negotiation and informed consent and ongoing communication practices and being kind and being honest with yourself and being able to be introspective. And these are all skills that most of us need regardless of the types of relationships that we engage in. So just keep that in mind. I think maybe the one thing that I haven't gotten to touch on yet that I think might be important is just keep in mind that it's okay to ask your submissive for help. And it's okay to ask for feedback, and it's okay to admit when you don't know things or when you're not comfortable with something as a dominant. It is okay to have your own limits and boundaries. It is okay to have things that you don't know and to admit to that. It is okay to admit when you're not clear about something. And none of that should be seen as detrimental to being a dominant. Again, like I said at the very beginning of these two videos, dominants don't know everything, and you shouldn't expect that you will. Even for the first couple weeks or months that you do BDSM, it's a constant learning and growing experience, and if you can go into it with that mindset, I'm sure you're going to have a fantastic time. And really, on the submissive side, I think what experienced submissives need to keep in mind is just being kind, but being honest. And also just setting realistic expectations and knowing that your partner is probably going to be trying their best. Anyways, that is everything for today's video. If you have any other comments or questions, please let me know down in the comment section below. Links to related videos and other resources will be down in the description box. If you like this video series and you'd like more information to help you on your BDSM journey, you can subscribe to my channel. I make videos twice a week. And if you'd like one-on-one help, tutorials, book recommendations, and access to our Discord chat where we have lots of ongoing advice and support from submissives and dominants of all types, that is over on Patreon. If you haven't checked it out, please do. Link will be down below. If you already support me on there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you guys next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.